Legacy support is one of my favorite things about Yu-Gi-Oh! I love that a card can just sit around for years and then randomly get a bunch of support that makes it or the deck it goes in a lot better. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 3 different types of legacy support that I've noticed over the past few years. Of course, there are so many cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And so many different waves of legacy support that you're going to find cards that fall into multiple categories. But for today's video, I tried to pick cards that almost certainly fall under just one of the 3 different categories. Before we get into that though, let's talk about today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Ridge Wallets. Ridge makes sleek minimalist wallets that are the perfect upgrade from your old bulky leather wallet. There's over 30 different colors and styles to choose from, including the carbon fiber option that I've been using. The cards easily slide in and out to give you access to whichever one you need. There's even a convenient money clip on the back for carrying cash. Ridge Wallets even have a lifetime warranty, so you'll never need to buy another wallet. The Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it that they'll let you try it for 45 days, and you can send it back for a full refund if you don't absolutely love it. If you're interested in picking up a Ridge wallet, make sure to click the link in the description below, and don't forget to use code Dzeeff in all caps for 10% off your order. The first category is good legacy support. This is support that dramatically helps modernize the card or the deck and makes it a viable strategy, maybe even for the first time, as we'll see in a moment. It could make the deck meta, which is pretty cool. It might just make it a good rogue strategy, but it has to be significant enough that there is a noticeable power level difference between the deck pre and post legacy support. And this power level difference has to be proven with tournament results. The first good legacy support card that I want to talk about in today's video is one that I've praised a lot in the past. Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon is one of the most perfect pieces of legacy support in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a lot of other Blue Eyes support that matters, but Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon is one of the best cards for a Blue Eyes strategy. Even with all of the other Blue Eyes support that was released in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! That you usually associate with this strategy, the Blue Eyes deck was kind of struggling at the tournament level. However, when they got Alternative, everything changed. Suddenly they were one of the best decks of the format. They won the World Championship, and this is the card that put Blue Eyes on the map competitively. I mean, I've mentioned in the past that Blue Eyes was a pretty good engine card in other decks, but as far as an actual pure Blue Eyes deck, it was Alternative that made the difference. This is a card that actually gives you a reason to have Blue Eyes White Dragon in your hand. It's the perfect card to search off of Melody of Awakening Dragon. It seems like Melody was actually designed with Alternative in mind, which makes a lot of sense. It pops cards, it special summons itself for free, you can use it for rank 8s, you can use it for level 9 synchros with your level 1 tuner monsters. This is the card that holds the Blue Eyes deck together. Blue Eyes Alternative will always be one of the best pieces of legacy support in my mind because it was the card that made Blue Eyes a competitively viable strategy, which ideally is the purpose of legacy support. And while not one individual card, I feel like all of the hero support that we've gotten over the past couple of years is fantastic legacy support. The Vision heroes were great, the Evil heroes were surprisingly powerful, and all the other hero cards that we've gotten have been really good. Heroes have not been a tier 1 deck since all of this support, but they have been a really solid rogue contender with a lot of tops under their belt. The hero strategy prior to this recent wave of support over the past couple of years was really struggling. Don't get me wrong, the deck had been successful in the past with many different variants, and more recently when Masked Hero Darklaw was first released, there was a lot of hype surrounding the deck, but there was a couple years there where hero decks were just not in tournaments at all. They were just not performing well, but then slowly we got better and better support, and now it's a pretty competent deck. And who could possibly forget Blaze Accelerator Reload? This one individual card made an almost completely useless, unplayable archetype into a YCS topping rogue strategy. Volcanics were really good with Blaze Accelerator Reload. When this card was first released, we saw a lot of Volcanic lists topping event after event after event. This one single card brings the entire archetype together. If this thing was released back when Volcanics were first released, it probably would have ended up on the ban list. Keep in mind that because Volcanics are pyro monsters, they don't have the same luxuries as other types. The Blue Eye strategy, for example, you know, they have a lot of level 8 monsters, so you have trade-in, you also have cards of consonants for their tuners, and also their dragons, and there's a bunch of fantastic dragon support support that's been released over the years. For Pyro Monsters though, not so much. They're kind of in an awkward spot. Even right now, they're still in an awkward spot, but all it took to turn one completely irrelevant archetype into a competitively viable event-topping rogue strategy was one really well-designed trap card. Totally Awesome was also a fantastic piece of support for the fan-favorite Frog archetype, and it helped them use the Paleozoics as well. So Frogs got a huge boost when Totally Awesome was first released. We had seen Frog decks be competitively viable for years, but at that point they had kind of been out of competition for a few years, but this brought them back, and it was a huge deal. For some people, this might be considered a controversial piece of legacy support because it did see play in other decks that could use Bahamut Shark, but generally speaking, Totally Awesome has seen the most amount of success in the deck that it was meant for, Frog Paleozoics. And then we have the meh category, which is support that isn't very impressive. I did not want to call this the bad category because these cards aren't all necessarily bad or terrible support cards. They're just not super exciting, and they didn't really increase the tournament capabilities of the deck. For example, remember all that Fortune Lady support in Rising Rampage? What the heck was that? So this is a case of support not necessarily being bad because it did boost the power level of Fortune Ladies a little bit, but it is meh in the way that it actually didn't make them any better at tournaments. Fortune Ladies before this support were really bad. Fortune Ladies after this support were better, but still not very viable. This is not what you want out of legacy support. It would have been cool to see Fortune Ladies be a rogue strategy at competitive events, maybe get a couple regional tops here or there, but realistically this support just really flopped. I would argue that the base Fortune Lady cards, like from the original set, things like Water and Light, and then the Draw 2 spell, those cards are actually better than the base Volcanic cards, which were completely useless for the most part. However, Volcanics only needed one really good card to boost the strategy from unplayable to rogue level, whereas Fortune Ladies got a whole bunch of support and it didn't make a huge impact. I will mention that Fortune Ladies, at least to my knowledge, with this support were pretty good in Duel Links. We're not really focusing on that format for today's video though, so as far as TCG events go, Fortune Ladies really weren't very good. I also think of like the BES support that we've gotten over recent years. Sometimes people call it the Boss Rush archetype. So they got that really good field spell that objectively is a good card in the context of a BES strategy, but man, it was just not enough. I mean, don't get me wrong, on paper, this field spell, if it was in any other archetype, would be really broken, but in the context of the BES archetype, it's just not good enough to make up for the BES's downsides. We also got a new card, BES Blaster Cannon Core in Rising Rampage. Once again though, this card was just not enough, and don't get me wrong, it's actually pretty decent in combination with the field spell, but there's just not enough of a backbone for the rest of the deck to actually be competitively viable. Lastly, I'll mention the Destiny board support. Actually, the first piece of support that they got, the field spell, is pretty decent for a Destiny board deck, but the most recent batch of support was just kind of all over the place and didn't really help a lot of the bigger issues of the Destiny board archetype, if that's even an archetype, but Destiny board is still nowhere near competitively viable, even on a rogue level, and even with the field spell that is actually pretty good support, you have to ask yourself, is this better than just plain Mystic Mine? And the answer is probably no, which is a real shame. Destiny board is in a really bad spot, which is no surprise to anyone that's watched my videos on it, but the support was especially disappointing because I feel a lot of players felt it could have been better. And then we have the controversial category. And what makes these cards controversial is that they are really good legacy support, but maybe a little bit too good in that they get used in other strategies more so than the original deck that they were intended to be legacy support for. There are many cards that could fall under this category because it's happened a lot over the past 5 years especially, but I want to mention just a few highlights in today's video. One that happened pretty recently was Magician's Souls. Objectively speaking, this card is fantastic legacy support for the Dark Magician archetype. It really does considerably boost the power level of a deck that really hasn't seen a lot of success. However, as most of you are probably already aware if you've played in any tournaments over the past few months, this card has seen a lot more success in decks that aren't Dark Magician. We've seen it in Spirals and Lunalights and Orcus and Eldritch and Pendulums. So many different decks have used this card and actually seen a lot more success than Dark Magician. And the main reason is that the effects on this card are a little bit too generic. It's possible that they could have made it only send Dark Magician specifically from your deck to special summon it, but even then it probably still would have been played, maybe not so much in spirals, but certainly in other strategies that didn't have a level 6 spellcaster in the first place. I suppose they also could have made the drawing effect not able to send any spell or trap card, but have to specifically send spell and traps that list Dark Magician in the text. But what ended up happening is that so many of the meta strategies were playing this card that it was like $150 at its absolute peak. This made it very difficult for the budget Dark Magician players to actually pick up their copies, and many players right now, even because it's still at like $90, do not have their copies for their Dark Magician deck, which is the deck that this card was originally designed for. Isolde is a great example as well. It's obviously supposed to be a piece of Noble Knight support, but because it can summon any warrior, well, players ended up using it in a lot of other decks that weren't Noble Knights, things like Goki and Dark Warrior, just to name a couple examples. Konami obviously wanted Noble Knights to be a little bit better, and this card is pretty good in a Noble Knight deck. However, because it can summon any warrior monster, it just became one of the best warrior support cards in the entire game. I'm not sure if Konami just wasn't thinking that people would play random equip spells in their warrior combo decks, but when the benefit is so large and the equip spells aren't even that bad to draw, of course people are going to play this in their warrior strategies, not just Noble Knights. Phantom Knight's Rusty Bardiche was also a card that is very clearly meant to benefit the Phantom Knight strategy, and it certainly does. However, the Phantom Knights proved to be way too splashable, and this card could be made in a variety of combo decks, leading to it getting banned, and that's a real shame because that meant that Phantom Knights were in a really rough spot in Master Rule 4. We still pretty much have not seen Phantom Knights in competition since this card got banned, which means that this card that ironically was supposed to help out Phantom Knights actually ended up hurting them in the long run. Instead of giving them a mediocre card that only Phantom Knights could use, they gave them a card that was way too powerful, and now Phantom Knights have no link monster. There are so many different legacy support cards that I obviously can't mention them all in this one video. There were others even on my list that I had planned on talking about, but I didn't want this video to be like 45 minutes long. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.